about to have a good day. No matter what they say. The sun is shining down on me.
Hi, I'm Pastor Nick with Convinced Ministries, and we're here today to ask a question that we've been asking at the colleges we go to here in our community, Cal State University Fullerton and the JC. And the question we asked was, do you believe or are you convinced that Jesus rose from the dead? So we know in Matthew chapter 28, after Jesus had been crucified and he had been buried in the tomb for 3 days, that he rose from the dead. The scriptures tell us that he was seen by some of the women and then by his apostles. And then for 40 days, he was with them. And so it's important for us to ask this question of whether or not Jesus actually rose from the dead. And since we don't have the opportunity to actually go back in time and be there, what we can do today is look at the evidence that we see in Scripture and outside of Scripture to see if there's enough evidence to say Jesus rose from the dead. And so what we're going to do today is think about what was happening in the time of Jesus. So in the time of Jesus, under the Roman Empire, that when a person was crucified on a cross, the Romans were experts at murder. And the cross was the main tool they used. And so Jesus was on a cross. And even the Romans believed that he was dead. And that's an interesting thing for us to think about. And then he was buried in a tomb for 3 days and sealed in that tomb by the Romans, who put guards in front of that tomb. And then all of a sudden, on the third day, he rose from the dead and the tomb was empty. This spread wildly throughout the community. His apostles, who were with him for 3.5 years, knew him well. They recognized him. They ate with him. They slept there in the same places as him. So they would have known him very well. And then they saw him. And each one of the apostles, and this is one of the huge evidences that Jesus rose from the dead, was that every one of his apostles, every one of his disciples died a martyr's death. They were killed and would not renounce that Jesus rose from the dead. Now, I don't know about you, but I would never die for a lie. So that's a strong evidence. And not only do we have evidences in the Bible, but we have evidences outside the Bible. For example, Josephus, Tacitus, Suetonius, Pliny the Younger, who were not Christians, outside of the Bible, tell us that the Christians of the first century believed that Jesus rose from the dead. And as a matter of fact, they called him one who did magic, which just goes to the fact that he did miracles. And so they believed that Jesus and the believers of that day actually believed Jesus rose from the dead. There were eyewitness testimonies of over 500 people who saw Jesus rise from the dead all at one time. We have the apostles who saw Jesus rise from the dead in the first century. And even John, who was the longest living apostle, and they tried to martyr him, still believed Jesus rose from the dead to the day that he died and never recanted. And that's how you know Jesus rose from the dead. Next time, we'll have another question for you here at Convinced Ministries. God bless.